This is Don't Get Me Started. This is a conversation about advertising. I'm Dan Balser, Director of the Academy at Goodby, Silverstein and Partners, and this is episode 340. All right, yes, welcome back to what I think could be the last episode of the podcast. And listeners who have been dedicated listeners, both of you or one of you, you probably noticed that this has been like months, early August, since the last published episode. And the fact that I've only heard from maybe two of you asking whether there's going to be more is telling about the lifespan of this podcast. But I don't want to feign modesty. It's been an incredible fucking ride. 300 and this is the 340th episode, and it's been 14 years of conversations. And before I get into like this conversation with Zach and an update about what's happening in life and the future of the show, I just want to thank everyone who's been on this podcast. And it's far too many names to name. It's all there at balserville.com. You can go find them. They're all on there. And, honestly, as I enter this next stage of my career, I don't know that I would be where I am if I hadn't just said, yeah, let's just record a conversation and see what happens. I had no expectations that this podcast was going to last more than one episode, two episodes. And it's been an incredible privilege for me to get to know so many interesting people and to open doors. So look, if you're listening to this and you have an idea for something and you're not doing it, then you are holding yourself back. So that's all I have to say about that. I don't know what's coming next, but I know what's coming next right now is we're going to have a conversation with Zach. My voice just cracked. I don't know what happened with Zach Canfield, who's on his back. He had, Zach is a very wise, mature, intelligent professional whom I've known for over a decade. And he admitted that he was a little bit naive when it came to how severe the surgery that he just had was going to be on his foot. When he described the surgery to his foot to me before it, I off camera was cringing. If he had seen my face, he would have been like, oh, because they had to re-break and then assemble some ankle tendons that were artificial with screws. And he's in pain and he's a gamer and he's back to work and we're going to talk because for two reasons. Number one, he's now like my work husband. We talk every day, and which is fucking awesome for me. And two, because Zach Canfield, Director of Talent at Goodby, Silverstein and Partners in San Francisco, holds the record to this day of the most downloaded episode of this particular podcast show. So it seems apropos and perfectly logical for me to wrap up or ramp down this podcast with Zach. So Zach, thank you for agreeing to have a conversation in the middle of your insanely busy week, I must say, to talk to our listeners and me and just to catch up and look forward and all that.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. And it's very concerning that I was the most listened to episode. It's very bizarre.
Why do you think you were?
I don't know. Good question.
What do you mean concerning? What do you mean concerning?
I'm just joking. It's I would have never guessed I would have been the top 100 out of what 350 plus that you've had. You've had so many cool people on there.
I have, but I think that you're the one that might have some tips about how to get a job in the industry.
That's true. Well, then one question for you. So I'm the most downloaded episode, but what was your most memorable conversation?
Jeff Kling. It's funny because no one's ever asked me that directly, that pointedly. So without thinking about it, normally your knee-jerk reaction is the correct answer, right? I would have to say it was Jeff, and because his answers surprised me, and he has almost visible energy shooting off of him when you're in the same room with him. He's probably the purest creative force, not to take anything away from anyone else I've talked to who are all close second. There's like a creative force coming off of him. And in the room when we recorded was his really good friend who I became friends with later, Spence Kramer. And at the end of the conversation, we were walking out, and Spence says to me, he goes, "Wow, Dan, you handled him really well." And I was like, I didn't realize I needed to handle him.
Jeff's amazing. I worked with him at Wyden. I love him. He's like a true artist. He's absolutely incredible. He's so smart. He's insanely smart.
Yeah, he's like another level smart.
Yeah.
And then I think that conversations with our bosses, Rich and Jeff, were also eye-opening. And anytime that I can have a conversation with someone who isn't performing and is being who they are, it's an honor and a privilege, to be honest.
It's cool.
So there's a few things I want to talk about for listeners today. I want to tell a little story about how I transitioned away from 18 years at the Creative Circus into starting this project with you. And I want it to be known for those at the Creative Circus and those who are invested in the legacy of that school, that at no time did Zach Canfield call me and try to convince me to make a move and leave my position and start something at the agency. That's not how this went down. Zach didn't poach me, right? So what had happened was, I'm always looking for opportunities. I'm always, trying to hustle for side projects and freelance. I've been a freelancer since I started teaching. And I literally just called Zach. Listeners, I'm telling you the story. I called Zach and I said, look, I'm open to any opportunities that you guys have going down. Like, I've been podcasting, I'm a freelancer, and let me know if you guys are, have any need for someone like me. And Zach said, well, while we're talking, and maybe I've changed the story, Zach, you can correct me if it's wrong.
I remember it a little different, but I do remember the call, but I remember the call.
Go ahead.
Well, I remember the call happy to see you calling and you saying kind of like, I'm ready to make a change and I'm thinking about my next career move. And
Did I say that?
Yeah. And something in there about a life coach or an employee coach or a something coach.
Okay.
And I said, wow, it's absolutely insane timing because maybe an hour before you called, I had just, for the third or fourth time presented to our partner group at Goodby this idea of starting a school. And then an hour later you call saying, hey, I'm kind of thinking about, what life could potentially look like outside of the circus, maybe. And then you call me an hour later after I had just done this presentation at the school about the school to the partners. And it just felt, it was very serendipitous.
Yeah, I guess I don't know why I leave that part of it out. I don't know.
I think it's cool. I wouldn't leave it out because I think everyone should. I love, we all need to be bouncing ideas off people, and I love the idea of having. I've benefited greatly by having coaches in my life, so I think it's most of the great creatives I know check in with people outside from time to time to ask for advice or to steer their careers a little bit. So I think it's cool.
I appreciate you saying that. And I was, today we're recording this simultaneous to the Atlanta Braves championship parade. They're doing their parade in two parts today. And I just saw an interview with Alex Anthopoulos, who's the guy who basically built this team at the trade deadline. I don't know, I'm not gonna get too into the detail of it, but I heard that before he got these players at the trade deadline, he had done due diligence and called former managers of each of the players to check in on the character of those players. He had gone to find out like what they were like in the locker room, what their work ethic was like. And then he said in this interview, he said that, we've won this title. It's going to be very tough to repeat. He said there's a lot of contracts that are due. They're up for renewal. He said his plan next week is to get on the phone with GMs at clubs who have managed to repeat and find out what they've done, how that worked, basically never stopping having those conversations. And, if I tell the story accurately, I was looking to see what I can do next. And again, this is not about, it's about, I saw somewhere some stupid.
It's normal for someone Instagram who's been somewhere for 18 years.
Well, I just think as creative people, I know myself, I need a challenge. And I know that I need to be, it's almost like this. I look at myself and I think we all should do this. We all look at ourselves as a certain amount of energy or power, like that we hold in us. It's almost like we have like a certain number of units of power. And how much of that power are you putting out there? How much of the power are you like actually leveraging? And I feel like if you looked at a chart of my power, I'm all about the chart now that I'm using a Peloton. If you look at the chart, it's like I used to be pinned up at the top of that thing, and it started to kind of sink a little lower. I felt like I had extra to give that I wasn't able to do. And I think that this challenge of starting this school from scratch, which is a lot of work. I've never been, I shouldn't say never, but I can't remember the last time I was this energized and fired up to do it. So what's the point from your perspective of this place, and what do you hope to achieve out of a academy in-house at an agency where you've been for a long time? And there's not necessarily, or was there an impetus to do this?
Well, I mean, just like you, I just want to say that, I absolutely love the Creative Circus and proudly was on their board for many, many years. And we've hired so many great people from that place. And of course, all these portfolio schools, we want them to thrive. I want them to thrive. It's better for the industry. It's better for us when these schools are filled with great students that are getting put into our industry. I mean, for me, it was just the insight was, I've been doing this a long time, and I've been going to schools for a long time, and there's just more and more and more of people like me at these schools now, and just beyond agency side, client side people, and people who have their own firms, and so there's just a lot more people looking for talent, and the schools aren't necessarily growing, that's for sure. And the other thing is, the barrier to entry to these schools is expensive. When I got into advertising in the 90s, it was not, you didn't have to go to these portfolio schools to get a job. They were helpful. But the bar has been raised so high by these portfolio schools that there's a lot of really great, talented young artists out there, but they can get overlooked because they can't get into one of these schools. And so, so that was really where the idea came from. It was, I wonder if we could just have another pipeline into the industry. We've got this really killer space. We've got a lot of great people who could teach. And is there a way that we could offer an education to people without them going into debt, and maybe getting a group of people who might be overlooked otherwise, or just the barrier to entry is too tough for them. So that was really the impetus. And I think naively, originally I thought this is something that we could probably do internally by ourselves, and quickly realized, holy shit, no way, we need like a world-class educator like yourself to help guide the ship. And the last little bit I'll say is the great thing that's happening right now is there's a lot of energy in our industry to change it and to get more pipelines into the industry. So there's a lot of like boot camps and quick little sprints that people can join to get an education. And I think that's fantastic. And I hope it keeps happening. And I think the distinguishing thing that we've, from the beginning with this, that we've always wanted is it's not a boot camp. It's not like a 6-week introductory thing or make a portfolio piece. It's really, truly trying to give the best education that we possibly can to kids who can hopefully be future leaders in our industry. So it's a really big undertaking, and thank God you joined.
Well, I'll say this about me, and it's a great. I tip my hat. I said this on another podcast, on the Bad podcast with Brian Revels and Amelia. I don't remember her last name, and I'm an asshole. I tip my hat to the agency's commitment to providing a full-time role, because it's not necessarily even that it's just me, but even in this last week when I sent out, we have an internal advisory board, and I sent out a note to them to help sort of react to some of the classes we're thinking of teaching. And I heard back from 3 of the dozen people, because people are swamped, people are busy. And I think I guess I'm going to say this to anyone who's listening to this who might be considering starting a school at an agency, which I 100% call me, let's talk about it. You should do it. This should be something that agencies are doing. Having that commitment to someone who can kind of, it's their job, I think has been like super, super important. And I think there's a lot of stuff that I bring that you can learn. as far as like having run the school and understanding, or having run my program and understanding what students need. But I think it's really fundamentally an agency's commitment that's going to make this successful.
Yeah.
And I do want to talk a little bit about the dancing around the terminology of the pipeline and the no tuition part of it. I want to make a couple of really important points. I want to go there on this podcast, and let people know where my head is. There's two types of reactions that we've gotten to this program that I've seen. And the majority of them are people who, and Zach, you made this great point about people who know you and know me and know our commitment and know how we are with people and how we are with nurturing talent and identifying talent. And that's awesome. Then there's also, I would have to say, a majority of people who don't know us, who might be, it's a raised eyebrow when they see two white guys starting a school to provide opportunity for historically underrepresented people. And I just want to say this about that. I'm keenly aware of this color of my skin. I'm keenly aware of my background. I'm also keenly aware that my background enabled me, as someone who's not in a group that's excluded from the industry, to have basically had a Teflon experience getting into this industry. I went straight into an agency right out of college, went straight into ad school right out of that, went straight into an agency in New York and worked for 10 days, and went straight into a leadership role at ad school, because I was in the group that was included. I was not in the excluded group. Honest to God, I was sitting here the other night doing my laundry, folding my socks, sorting my socks. You don't fold socks. Who folds socks? And I had this thought that, like, who would be better in this job than me? And the person who'd be better in this job than me does not yet exist. And I actually believe that it's my job. I did the math on this. It's my job to train my replacement. And by the math, I mean, by the time we get students who are in position to run this school, I'll be retirement age. So my hope is to create identify and train a diverse cohort that can change the face of this industry. And I'm going to take the responsibility of doing that, knowing that I don't know half the shit that we need to know, and that we're all going to be learning this and growing and making it as we do it. So I hope that's a fair way of saying that, but I think it's important for me to have articulated that.
It's also important and cool, I think, to acknowledge the fact that, we're figuring this out every day as we go along. We're driving in the car and the road is being built in front of us by us as we're figuring this out. And the great news, we have a really good group of kind of like a board at the agency with lots of different points of view on this stuff who can help guide us. And we're doing our best. We're working hard at it. And I think, I really think we'll be able to give a pretty damn good education to kids. And every year, I'm sure we can keep refining it. And, I'm talking to kids who've been applying, and it's so cool to see their eyes light up knowing that they don't need to get into debt. And it feels really good to be able to try to provide that opportunity for people, because most of the people I've talked to desperately want to be in this industry and desperately want to get the education. They just cannot afford it.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a great team internally, and it turns out we have a great team externally, because I got a direct message from Oriel Davis Lyons, who's the founder of the One School, the One Club's One School, and he had some really great feedback about how to design this to enable people to succeed while they're working. Problems that you don't have at a full-time school, and to have people sort of helping advise internally and even externally, I think is really, it's heartwarming. It's also encouraging, and it's also damn wonderful. It's cool that you started having. So Zach's already started like talking to applicants. We've got 120 some in the first week, and hoping to get a lot more. By the way, if any of you guys listening to this, you guys should apply, and you should spread the word, because this is going to be fun. It's going to be an incredible experience for a year. I think probably more than a year, just on the record, officially, unofficially. Because we don't have accreditation, we are able to customize this to fit the needs of the cohort, to fit the needs of the program and the needs of the industry and the agency, so that, and you didn't say this at the beginning, but the ideal sort of setup would be that we have a dozen students graduating, and some of them end up staying with us, where, you've done your recruiting by training them in-house. And I think that that's pretty damn awesome. Pretty damn awesome.
Also be great to see. I mean, I'm also just as excited to call all the recruiters from other agencies and line up these, the people that are graduating with us to get them going to other places. It's going to be really cool. Like, it's kind of like our internship program, which I've been running for a really long time. It's, every year you have a certain amount of people who come in, and then over the years, you just, when I'm looking at LinkedIn or at award shows or, new business wins, I'll see all these people who were interns with us. It must be like that for you every day. Like every day, if you read the press, it's like, oh, I taught that kid, or I know that kid, or that kid came through the circus. It's very rewarding. And
literally every day. And like, it bums me out that creativity online they don't always have the credits at the bottom, because I always scroll straight to the credits to see which one of my little young
students.
ones, former students are making all this stuff. Speaking of which, and we're going to wrap up in a second. Speaking of which, I just want to say to all of you who clicked like or love on the LinkedIn post for this, all of you who made comments, I read every one of them. I scrolled through the 1,100 people who reacted to the post. I'm obsessive, like friggin' Taylor Swift. I look at my social media too much, and like, it doesn't go to my head. It warms my heart, and it fulfills me to know that you guys are out there, connected. It means a lot. And I just want to say I appreciate that. And I get a little bit emotional at the thought of wrapping up the podcast and wrapping up my time at the circus, because, it was a couple hundred kids a year that left that I affected. And this is going to be a different model. It's a smaller number. It's equally exciting and thrilling, but I'm going to miss being in those classrooms at 812 Lambert Drive. And I'm really hoping we can replicate the same energy and the same sort of enthusiasm in here. And I have 100% faith we will do so. As far as my presence on the internet talking into microphones, this podcast is going to remain on the internet as long as I continue to pay to keep it hosted. If you're so inclined to support this podcast, I would love it if you sent me $1 on Venmo, Dan-Balser, at Dan-Balser, because I'm paying out of my pocket to keep this podcast on the internet. As soon as I stop renewing, it goes away forever, but I want to leave it up there. Also, I guess I have this sort of perverse vision of like creating some sort of podcast with our students. Maybe we feature, maybe something like every couple of weeks, I feature one of them and we have them something like, I don't know, like tell a story.
I think you'd be crazy to walk away from I think these podcasts bring you joy, and you got to keep something going in some capacity. And I'm sure it's going to hit you. It's going to hit you one day and you're going to go, all right, this is the thing to do. But I cannot believe 300, how many conversations? 360?
This is 340.
That's insane.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible that you stuck with it, and you're going to have to transition into a new one, but I'm sure you're going to get hit one day with an idea.
Right. That's what I'm hoping. And also that's the brief in my mind, but I'm welcoming suggestions. You guys know how to reach me, Dan's podcast at mac.com. If you have an idea for a podcast, hey, you want to be on it? You have an idea, please hit me up. And if you have interest in going into this career, apply at theacademy.goodbysilverstein.com. You just type those words into your browser and the application comes right up. I mean, it's free of charge to apply.
It's also on Goodby's. If you go to GSP's website in the top right, you'll see the Academy link.
Yeah. Applications are open only for a little while longer, and then we're going to start fleshing out year one, and then we're going to open it back up again next fall for the second year. So if you don't make it this year, we'll see you hopefully in 2023. But yeah, please do apply. Also, send me a note about anything. Dan's podcast at mac.com. And thank you for listening. And Zach, thanks for talking for, I think, the third time, maybe fourth.
I think third time, yeah.
Record holder, Zach Canfield.
Hey, would you want people to reach out to you at all about like potentially helping too?
Yeah, I'm open to that. I have a document on my Google Drive That's a free service that Google provides for you to do things like charts and documents. And I've got a thing in there for outside. This is the thing I think we're going to be looking for, Zach. I think we're going to be looking for people who want to like, do a 1 day thing or a forum or something digital. Or if you're in the Bay Area, come in and teach Paul Charney a improv class or whatever. Yeah, reach out to me. Reach out to me for that at Dan_Balser at gspsf.com. That's Dan_Balser at gspsf.com. And in all the emails work. I look at all of them about one computer. Yeah, absolutely. I've got a lot of people that have reached out or volunteered, and I'm keeping all of your names in my master list. Coming up with some diabolical plan. Yeah, that's it. I think we're good.
Do you have like some sad music or some powerful music that you're going to overdub right here? And I think you need like some build up or something like an emotional song or anything.
Well, Rick Williams' old band provided the soundtrack for this podcast, mostly because every other music that I picked was like copyright had been like, there was violations for copyright usage, and he gave me permission to use his band. So no, there won't. I don't know. I'm sad now. We have to stop. We're done. This is over. I'm hitting the stop button. Zach, thank you. We'll have a meeting in a little bit about something else more important than this. Listeners, thanks for sticking with this for as long as you have, and thanks for listening to this one. And stay in touch and give me ideas, and I'll be back on the internet at some point. See ya. That's a wrap.